I wanted to do a video about Savasana because Savasana is like the root pose. Like, it's like the base pose, and it can be just the most wonderful pose, but it can also be just the most painful pose. So I didn't just go to yoga and then automatically go into Shavasana and feel peace and Zen, right? And I think people who are just starting out on yoga journeys, almost from seeing people talk about it, think that you're supposed to just be able to lay there and your brain's going to go quiet, and if not, you're a failure, right? And that's not true. So Shavasana can be a very like time when your mind spins, right? But the beauty of it is the more you practice it and the more you put like the intention of practicing in it, right? Like you're like, okay, listen, you give yourself permission. Like, I'm going to lay here for however many minutes and I'm going to breathe. And every time I wander off into wherever it is I'm going, I'm going to just like, oh, I wandered off, no judgment, come back, breathe. And the more we do that, then the more we train our brains, right? So our brains start to slow down to a point where we feel more balanced and more like, just like there's life running through our veins instead of like, you know, like one of the biggest draws for me to yoga was that I had finally learned after all these years that I could take my brain and I could like look at my nervous system and I could use my breath and my position to calm down, like actually in my head calm down, so that there's like less, you know, like it's not like 401 major highway in Ontario, and it's not like a rural road so I can't function or whatever. It's like somewhere in the middle. Whereas before it was like all the time. And I learned that I could slow that down. That was life-changing. It changed my health. It changed my will to live. It changed my like body. You can do so much with your breath and even just laying still, right? That's the thing about any yin classes. If you can't do the poses, you can go into whatever Shavasana position is most comfortable for you and just breathe. And you're still doing yoga, right? You're doing yoga, you showed up, you're breathing. Like intentionally breathing and breathing with your body, right? When I first started out, I found it even hard to have somebody tell me to breathe, and to even breathe with people in time at first gave me like almost panic and like flutters and anxiety. I can feel it now because like it used to freak me out, but now it doesn't. So it's like we have to, Shavasana is like the foundation, right? And so almost before we go into it, we have to give ourselves permission to go into it. Sometimes we just need that. Maybe a lot of us who practice a lot would just like kind of melt into it, and we're more practiced into like kind of surrendering for a bit. But it's allowing ourselves to surrender, right? So it's like in essence, like we have to give ourselves permission before we go into it, because then when we go into it, we're more likely to give ourselves the grace and like melt into it, right? So many things can like come into your mind, especially if you're a creative person, if you're like a neurodivergent person, like you're, you know, so many things can come into your mind in Shavasana when you're just breathing, right? And you don't have to lay there and figure everything out. It's not for figuring out anything. That's the whole point of it. You just lay there now and you're in the class, or you're finishing a class, or you're in the middle. Middle Shavasanas are awesome. And you're just, it's like practice times where you're just going to be with yourself. Like Shavasana on a yoga mat for me, when it's a really good one, sometimes I do. My mind is like, and I can't, and I'm hungry. Like just, sometimes there's things, right? But when it's a really, really good Shavasana and I'm laying on my mat, like I truly feel like it's like my magic carpet, because I feel like everything is clear and everything, like it, if you know, you know, right? So I want you to have a good Shavasana. So that's why, number one, you need to make sure you're comfortable. So whatever position you're comfortable in, you don't have to lay on a floor if you're not comfortable laying on a floor, or if you have mobility issues, right? You can lay in a bed, you can lay on your couch. You want to be comfortable for Shavasana. And if you need to prop up your legs, your knees, or like have a pillow behind your head, under your back, like do whatever it is you need to do so that you can literally just like start melting your body And I know that there's people out there who are possibly thinking like, how could my body ever feel melted? Because chronic pain means chronic pain. So you're never not in pain, right? We're never not in pain. There's always something. So a practice like this makes it way more manageable and gives us way more mobility and like breath and like life, you know? So yeah, starting with Shavasana is a beautiful thing, and you can really just lay there and melt and practice in training your mind, right? So that will be like Shavasana 101. You don't go into it thinking that you're automatically going to turn off your brain because you don't want to feel like a failure, and that doesn't happen, because that's not going to happen if you have a busy brain. You're not just going to lay there and be like, and it's empty. Like we can't, it's too much, too big of a gap. So we bridge it by practicing bringing our mind back. We're exercising like the parts of our brain, right? Without putting the pressure on us to meditate, to like sit and meditate, because depending on what sort of brain you have, that can be really difficult. That's why I like Shavasana so much too. It can be a meditation. My goodness, I'm excited. It can be a meditation if you want it to be, right? And then you don't have to put pressure on yourself to like meditate in a certain way. You can Shavasana in your own way, train your breath in your own way, train your brain in your own way. You have like full permission to use this for healing in a way that you want. So go forth and have like beautiful Shavasanas, and know that when your brain wanders, it's okay. Don't judge yourself. Know that when you're like, some days you just can't and you might go through the motions a bit. That's okay. You come back, you practice again. I do wish you really whatever beautiful for you Shavasana is. Yeah.